Thanks, you guys. I'm going to be reading from my first book called Flatline. And it's a story about an Austin-based investigative journalist who is unemployed and he witnesses a murder. And this is about 40 pages in, and this is right after he witnesses his neighbor being murdered. I stood above the toilet in our downstairs bathroom and stared at the picture Paula hung above the toilet a few days ago. It was of a young girl standing in the middle of a cornfield with a barn behind her in the distance. It was black and white and worn around the edges, and I wondered where people found stuff like this. Paula never took pictures, and she didn't know anyone who lived in a cornfield or anyone who had access to a cornfield, at least to my knowledge. So either she liked it enough to purchase it at a garage sale or flea market, or she just happened to find it, but didn't like it enough to put it anywhere other than above the downstairs toilet, where it would only be seen by me and a handful of dispersed guests. Were we supposed to leave the wall blank? There was a loud knocking on the door, followed by a gruff voice. "Time's up." I was a prisoner in my own home, allotted only seconds to pee and maybe a minute to sit on the toilet if I chose to do so, with the APD stationed in the living room enjoying Paula's fresh-made coffee cake. I should pray to be lucky enough to make a phone call, but maintained a level head and tentative appreciation that they haven't hauled me downtown to police headquarters. My escape plan from Janice's was poorly thought out, to say the least. I should have remembered that there's a police station just under a mile from our house, and we live in a quiet community where the only crime is the thought of someone sailing through a red light. It was stupid of me not to realize that someone was sitting at the station waiting for a call from 911 about a murder in an area that was geographically convenient for the police. When I saw the cruiser lights, I was staring at the plane tickets on Janice's fridge. United, first class, departing in less than a week. Her and I spoke only a few times, mostly her passing acknowledgement of my cute offspring, but nowhere in my mind did I ever think that my clever and often witty responses would lead her to booking a trip for her and I to Cabo. People see what they want to see, I guess. As the two officers arrived at her house and shut the doors to their cruiser, I thought about turning and running through the back door and over her fence and then loop back around and sneak in through the back door to our house. I keep a spare key or two around for situations like this. But there was no time, and I was totally screwed. I stood there as police knocked on the front door. I even said, "Come in." I thought it would be rude not to. They opened the door slowly and leaned in with their guns drawn. I said, "Have a seat," and introduced myself as the man who called 911 and also lives across the street. I left out the part about our secret trip to Cabo. See that nice house with the beautiful potted plants hanging over the front porch? I live there, and the plants are fake. Needless to say, the officers didn't sit down. I tried as best I could to explain what I saw and why I was standing in her kitchen. They asked where the body was, and I couldn't really tell them. We exchanged a few awkward pleasantries. I mentioned the DPS cruiser, and they said we should go over to my house, sit down, and talk. On my way out, one of them noticed the plane tickets on Janice's refrigerator. "We're supposed to leave for Cabo on the 11th, he said. Great detective skills there. I asked them, why would I leave the tickets on her refrigerator if I was just going to kill her? They said the clues are everywhere. You just need to know where to look. Police Academy 101 right there. I flushed the toilet, washed my hands, and opened the bathroom door to discover Detective Skelly standing against the opposite wall, caressing fragments of breakfast taco out of his beard. He looked the part, tired, cranky, as if the aggregate of all the world's criminally activities were weighing heavily on him, and he wasn't sure how to handle the pressure. He looked like a twice-divorced alcoholic who was battling a weight problem that was a result of a working man's diet and life dedicated to hard-nosed policing. Is this what true heroism looks like? Or did he aspire to the role because society told him that's what we wanted? I trust someone because they are simply more stressed out than I am, and he isn't focused on his diet or appearance, so surely he cares about me and my needs. Sorry, I said as I followed him back into the living room where Paula was sitting on the couch, flanked by the two responding officers. On the way over here, Officer Daniels called into police headquarters to report, correctly so, that there wasn't a body or any sign of a murder at the house in question. In fact, it looked like someone had just left for a very nice vacation, despite my assurances otherwise. What good was an eyewitness account of a murder these days if you didn't have a body to go along with the crime? Have a seat. Skelly gestured over to a leather armchair sitting in the corner. He pulled out a black moleskin notepad, flipped to the first page. Good to see you starting fresh. State your name, he said. Peter Richards. And you, he waved a slothful hand towards Paula. Paula Richards, I said. He glanced back at me, an eyebrow on the rise and a question right behind it, I'm sure. I was the one who made the call. She was upstairs asleep, I said. Is that accurate, he asked. Paula nodded. It was getting early, almost 5. What were you doing downstairs, he asked me. Watching TV. What were you watching? Something on the DVR. It doesn't matter. I heard a noise and I got up and I saw the DPS cruiser out front. How did you know it was a DPS cruiser? Officer Daniels blurted out after minutes of total silence, where he was probably reviewing options in his head on how he could best me. That's what he came up with. It said, Texas Department of Public Safety on the side. I could tell he was thinking it over in his head, maybe coming to a realization that he was stumped. Skelly was looking down at his notepad, admiring his penmanship. The windows were open. I could see into her house, I said. We live in a fairly private neighborhood, not a lot of people driving or walking by, so I think she was comfortable leaving the curtains open from time to time. Did she tell you that leaving the curtains open made her feel comfortable? No, we're in a cul-de-sac. Not a lot of people go by here. I think most people are okay leaving them open. Anyways, she was standing at the sink and he was on the other side of the kitchen. It looked tense, like he was unwelcome. After a minute or so, he walked out towards the back of the house. She pulled out her phone and called somebody. I think if you pulled the phone records, I think we know how to do our job, Daniel said again. He must be up for promotion. Of course you do. What was I thinking? I took a pause, more for effect than anything else, but I wanted to see if anyone else was going to say something. Silence. I glanced past the other officer's head to find the sun creeping over Janice's house. Maybe her body was over there and I blacked it out. We do strange things when we're in shock. The side of Daniel's belt buzzed. He pulled out a department-issued cell phone and looked down at it. I'll be right back, he said, and stepped out to the front porch. What happened next? Skelly asked. I took him through the next few minutes, all the way up until I let the officers in. He listened and didn't write anything down until the very end, and then he scribbled something. Maybe a reminder to pick up milk on the way home. I looked over at Paula and she was staring off towards the kitchen, probably thinking about moving here and getting settled. She was happy, just getting acclimated, and now this horrible and unbearable crime right across the street. What was your relationship with her again? Skelly asked. She was our neighbor, that's all. We've spoken to her maybe half a dozen times. She brought a casserole when Joyce was born, Paula said. Is there anything else you haven't told us? Skelly asked. No, I don't think so. I shifted to my seat and stared up at the dark gray and pea yellow, maybe green wall. The folded piece of paper I found in Janice's home office was pressed between me and the couch cushion. The second officer cleared his throat. Skelly looked over at him. Yes? Skelly beckoned of him. Well, there were 2 plane tickets on the refrigerator. Cabo on the 11th. The victim and... He pointed a thumb towards me. For the first time since she came downstairs, Paula looked up. They had a trip planned, he said. Peter? Paula looked at me. I have no idea, I said, and it was true. I wasn't sure what was going on. Maybe it's a different Peter Richards. The second officer pulled out a Ziploc bag with the plane tickets and looked at them. Peter Charles Richards. That's your middle name, isn't it? Yes, that's it, Paula answered for me and kept her eyes on me. Well, that aside, Skelly interjected, I guess we don't have to tell you, but without a body, there isn't a whole bunch we can do here. We can take your statement and file a report. Maybe if Daniels has some time, he'll run the plates on the cruiser. We have our priorities. Did you talk to any of your neighbors about it? I shook my head. No. Did you text or blog or tweet anything about it? Check into a murder scene on Facebook or anything, he asked. I think he was trying to be funny, but I couldn't really tell. No. Well, don't. It's the last thing our PR department needs right now. An alleged murder with no body. Are you hiring right now, I asked. Excuse me? For PR. You looking for a new PR guy? Jesus, Peter, Paula said. I wasn't looking at her, but I could feel the embarrassment. No, he said decisively. Well, it doesn't hurt to ask. Yeah, actually, sometimes it does hurt to ask, Skelly responded and flipped his notebook closed. There was a light knock on the back door. I turned around. Officer Daniels was standing in the backyard looking in. He waved his hand for Skelly to come outside. What's going on? I asked. Don't move, Skelly said as he got up and walked past me. He opened the sliding door and stepped outside. What's going on? I asked again as Skelly slid the door shut. I stood up. Sit back down, the other officer said, but I ignored him and went to the sliding door. Paula watched as I flicked the light on to illuminate the backyard. There was a rapid thumping in my chest as I watched Skelly and Officer Daniels walk to the side of our yard near Joyce's sandbox. What is it, Peter? Paula asked. I don't know, I said as Skelly and Officer Daniels reached the side of the yard. Daniels pointed down to the sandbox. I couldn't see because Skelly was blocking my view. He leaned over and pulled up on the cover. I built the sandbox when Paula was pregnant with Joyce. I wasn't handy, but I wanted to build something for my daughter. Paula did some research online and found blueprints for a simple 4x4 sandbox with a cover to keep out leaves and shitty weather. When I started building it, I got ambitious, so I built an 8x8 sandbox instead. It seemed reasonable in my head, but it was quite the task and the lid was heavy as shit. Daniels had to step in and help Skelly prop the lid up against the fence. Skelly stepped aside and looked into the sandbox where Janice's body was spread out like a kid doing a snow angel. My body was on a high, and I felt like I could run 2 consecutive marathons. As the adrenaline reached my heart and took a sharp right turn, it kept going. It was fast, and I suddenly felt my heart expand and press against the interior wall of my chest. I instantaneously felt lightheaded and sensed the color drop from my face, run down my arm, and find a hiding spot under my shoe. This wasn't normal, I thought, as my knees wobbled and I fell to the ground. My head smacked against our laminate and everything went black. My eyes rolled and I thought maybe if I had enough light, I could see the frontal lobe of my brain. This was it. 1 cheeseburger too many, and now I was dead. A failed career, crummy cholesterol, and death by anxiety, all before the age of 35. Paula was going to be so disappointed. Where did I keep that life insurance paperwork? Any questions? It's kind of cliffhanger a little bit.
So where's the process?
So I write in the morning. I usually get up about 4:30 and write for a couple hours in the morning until my kids wake up.
Yeah.
I do a lot of outlining. So I structure everything right at the beginning, kind of figure out the pacing and the chapters going into it. So when I get up, I'm pretty ready to go.
So essentially, is it fair to say it's a mystery?
Yes.
So with most mysteries, and not with all, but with most mysteries, you know the end and you work backwards. Did you work that way, or did you do more of the Gillian Flynn, like I have no idea what's going to happen?
I knew where I wanted him to end up in the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew what his story was. And it's really, I mean, it's about a guy who's pretty down on his luck. He gets involved with this murder and he can't really help himself. Like after he sees her being murdered, he goes over there. He wants to see what's going on. Like he's curious. And yeah, he just has a bad couple days,
Yeah.
to say the least.
Yeah. But from there, did you? I'm sorry.
What is the time period of the novel? I mean, you know,
So it's about a week.
about a week.
It's about 5 or 6 days. Yeah. So he has a heart attack, and then he may die for a little bit, and then gets into a lot of trouble, and he tries to kind of validate himself.
He's kind of a smart ass.
Oh,
Or
totally.
is he?
Yeah, he's a total pain in the ass. And I think it's, but hopefully charming too at the same time. But
I like the opening passage part that you read where he just seen this murder take place and he's reflecting on why is this picture here?
because he thinks, at least in my opinion, I think he feels like he's almost impervious.
Yeah.
You know, and he felt like going over to the house, like he was a journalist and worked in TV, and like everything that he did was finding the story, and
Right.
you know, he And he kind of did that job because he was passionate about it, but also it gave him gratification, you know, and it sort of played into his hero complex. And I think, and that's very much why he goes over there. It's like, oh, okay, well, I saw this horrible thing happen, but I know exactly what I'm doing. I can figure this out. And then he gets over there, there's no body, and he's got his name on a plane ticket with somebody he doesn't know very well. Yeah.
So like Rear Window?
A little bit, yeah, a little bit. He's a little more mobile, but yeah. At least up to a point, actually.
Have you seen Rear Window?
I have, yes.
Did that influence you?
Probably. I think definitely the tone of it did. I haven't seen it in a while, but I love that genre.
It's really, really good.
Yeah, and I got the idea and it was really just an idea that kind of got me started. Was I used to get up really early in the morning and go running in my neighborhood at like 4:30 in the morning, and people were awake. These people are in their houses like having coffee and just like, and I was like, what are these people doing? Like, it's like, I thought I got up early, but it just, and I was like, what if I saw something I didn't want to see? And there was also a lady living across the street from me who I didn't know, who I thought was really weird. So I was like, well, if she got murdered, what would I do? So I think it was a combination of those two things that led to this. And there are parts of it too, it's not necessarily dystopian, but it takes place in the not too distant future, whereas there's some technology, you know, that's advanced and, you know, yeah.
But it is Austin, right?
It is Austin, yep.
Yeah, I heard the PP.
Yeah. It was great. I've lived in Austin 6 years. It was great writing about the city and taking stuff and putting it, you know, in places I could go to and, you know, having like a really tangible, you know, interaction. So.
Did you use examples of Austin places?
Yeah, so there's some restaurants on the east side. There's some stuff downtown, and some stuff I use by name, and other things I'm a little vague about. So, but yeah.
Where do you think the police officer had his breakfast taco?
So their house is like in the northwest part of the city. So I think he probably had a taco at like a taco truck, sort of like on Duval and like airport maybe. And there's a couple of things like that. Some memories that I have when I first moved here about eating food, and I like food, and the experience of finding great food in Austin and is certainly in this book, for better or worse.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you guys very much.